That was a really nice intro, but I'm just going to introduce myself again. My name is Ricardo Bessa. I am an illustrator from Portugal. Been in London for about 9 years now. I am here to talk to you about this project that I worked on for the end of the fucking world. I'm going to be swearing a lot while I talk about this. I'm very sorry. But this was an ad campaign for the second season. The Channel 4 creative agency for Creative and Picnic Studios were also obviously involved, as was I. Yeah, so for those of you who haven't seen the show is about a couple of teenagers, very troubled teenagers who at first run off together, and their sort of road trip sort of becomes they end up running from the police. Season 1 ends on a cliffhanger where they're at a beach and James is being chased by the police, and then the screen cuts to black and you hear a shot. For season 2, Channel 4 wanted to ask the fans, they came up with this campaign to ask the fans for their theories about what was going to happen on season 2. And they picked a few of those theories and they turned them into these short animation / moving comics. Obviously, this ended up being 8 animations. This was a whole team of people working on this campaign for quite a while. And I just wanted, I'm here as the illustrator, but I just wanted to show you these making of videos, very, very quick one, that was produced by the Picnic Studio, the animation studio that worked on it. But why did they think that I was the right illustrator? Well, let's find out. So this is one of my illustrations that was shown to me when they first asked me if I was interested in working on the project. Basically, they said it captured what they wanted the animations to look like. They wanted to have these sort of colors, this sort of like fantasy and sci-fi thing. As an illustrator, that's something that's always been my inspiration. Growing up, I loved video games, I loved comics, Japanese animation, and I think that all informs the way my work looks. And I think they really wanted that sort of look. If I had to label my work, I would say that I sort of do a lot of 3 things. I do a lot of gay stuff, I do a lot of fantasy stuff, and this is actually my Dungeons and Dragons group, because of course I play Dungeons and Dragons. And I do gay fantasy stuff. This was actually for a Smirnoff Pride campaign, and this was one of the images in that campaign. It was a social media campaign. And did this sketch. They were like, great, and I was like, wonderful. And it was really fun. This sort of, the way that I work has actually allowed me to do some really cool stuff. Like I've worked for things such as Power Rangers, which 6-year-old me would have been so excited about, and did some stuff for Game of Thrones as well, for a couple of animations that were on the Blu-rays. And that's really cool. When you get to work in these properties that you actually really like, that's amazing. But what's also really great is when you're actually brought onto projects that don't necessarily have anything to do with fantasy or sci-fi or this kind of nerdy stuff, but because I'm giving that freedom, I make them into fantasy and nerdy stuff. Like, for instance, that one was for a comic convention, Thought Bubble. They just wanted a child with the book, something that appealed to that kind of stuff. They didn't ask for a group of adventurers, but that was my input. Again, for Clip Studio Paint software, drawing software. And again, they didn't ask for a bunch of witches flying through the sky. That was just me, and they liked it, so, lucky me. The thing is, with all of the way that I work, you may be wondering why this fit into the the actual project, because the series is actually based on comics, but those comics don't look anything like my work. The artist and writer, Charles Forsman, is a very different style, but well, they still wanted that sort of indie comic kind of sensibility, and as it turns out, the theories were completely bonkers, which is why they thought my style fit. These were the first two images that I worked on for the pitch. They were actually, again, as team efforts. These were actually storyboarded by Tan at Picnic Studio, very important to credit. And he made my life so much easier doing the whole project. But the whole concept of these animations for Channel 4 were that the animations would start in the actual scene from the end of the show, and then real image, filmed image, would transition into this animation. So for the intro of each animation, we kind of wanted a real world look, and then for the actual crazy theory that you were launched into, you wanted a different look, a more colorful, more vibrant look. And these were actually the images that I ended up taking inspiration from. This one as the image that I was told would be a really good sort of tone that they were going for. And that one actually from that last episode when they're at the beach and it's just like really gray and the sun hasn't come up yet. That's sort of the look that I was going for. And yeah, this ended up being the pitch images that I first did for the project. And then we got going with the rest of the project. So going from that, so we knew that we wanted the animations to be, to have this sort of real world turns into this crazy theory thing. We ended up doing 8 animations for 8 different theories. And something that I think everyone really wanted and I immediately thought of was I wanted each animation to look different from all the others. I wanted each of them to have different color schemes and a different look. I wish I could tell you that I actually planned this. I just did this for the keynote. I actually, when I started working on each animation, I just went like, okay, what color combination haven't I done yet? Okay, this is gonna probably look good, which is just like the messy way that I usually work when it comes to color. But hopefully it worked. I think it did. Yeah, I basically ended up doing this sort of spread for, just to show you guys the different looks of each animation. And this was the general color palette for the real world sort of intros with this sort of muted blues, muted grayish pinks for the sand, that kind of stuff. So I'm only going to show you a couple of the animations because I don't have enough time to show you all of them. This was one of my favorite ones.
I think it was James that shot his gun, and that's what we hear at the end of season 1. But he didn't shoot at the police. James is attacked by something in the sand, like a massive sandworm that jumps up and swallows him whole. Alyssa, being the badass she is, will run to the rescue with a sword. She'll jump on the sandworm and bam! She'll hold onto the beast as it zooms through the sand, until eventually James is spat out in the middle of the desert, but maybe surrounded by even more sandworms.
See what really happens. The End of the World, Series 2, premieres 4th of November on Channel 4. Also, stream on all 4.
So that didn't happen in season 2, I don't think. But this was the caliber of theory that we were working with. So as you can imagine, it was just really fun. It was just like I could do pretty much what I wanted in many ways. Yeah, again, I feel like a lot of the stuff that informs my work came into play for these, because as I was drawing these, I may have been thinking of these purple worms from Dungeons and Dragons again, when I designed those worms, and I may have looked at Link's sword from Legend of Zelda when I was drawing her swords. All that stuff came into play, and I think kind of shows this whole Tremors vibes kind of thing. Yeah, it was just like super fun to work on. And this was the second one. This is maybe my favorite one from the whole group.
So, my theory is that Series 1 ended with James getting shot. Alyssa is captured by Terry and Eunice, who, by the way, I think are aliens. They drag her on board the mothership, kicking and fighting. Now, James, I refuse to believe he just died, so I reckon he wakes up from the dead with some crazy abilities. While Alyssa is being tested on, James bursts through the ship using his new powers and fights the aliens so they can escape.
See what really happens. The End of the World Series 2 premieres 4th of November on Channel 4. Also stream on all 4.
Again, just so much fun. When they had been storyboarding this at Picnic, again, 10 I think did it. They sort of had these aliens sketched out that were very much based on these pulp covers from the 60s/70s, 50s, like these novels, these sci-fi novels, those little green men from Mars, which I kind of adapted, and I kind of wanted something different. I didn't want to go for a green, orange, yellow sort of route for the color scheme. I wanted something cleaner, so I gave them some suits because I figured, you know, these beings from outer space that are super developed and have this amazing technology, they wouldn't be running around naked, maybe. Or maybe they would, who knows. But again, for the spaceship, for the suits, I was looking at Dragon Ball stuff because I loved it as a child, and I was like, that kind of stuff is just so much fun. And definitely looked at those to design the spaceship. Definitely was looking at those healing pots from Dragon Ball when I drew this thing. And yeah, I think this one is actually maybe my favorite frame from the entire project, just because it was just so much fun. It's, yeah. Yeah, this shot I think is also, I just really like it. It's very, like, I don't know, epic. So, as I said, there were 8 animations. I'm just going to run you through very quickly through these, the ones from the other animations. In this theory, James turns into a giant turtle that flies them off to Mexico, and that's how it escaped the police. In this one, completely surreal, the shot that you hear was actually a party popper, and it was a surprise party for James, and the whole cast is there to sort of celebrate with him, even this one who's dead. And for this one, the theory was that Alyssa was actually a time traveler, and she would be adopted into a different family every few decades, and they would grow suspicious when she never grew old. So she would have to run off. That was the theory. This one, the sound that you hear at the end might have been the entire world just exploding, and it's the end of the entire universe, and everything is just, yeah, just disappears. In this one, the theory was that the two characters were actually, James was Alyssa and Alyssa was James, and the police get so confused that they just let them go and they walk into the sunset romantically. And for this one, the final one, which is actually the one that you saw during Peach Face, the theory was that James was one of many, many clones. And when he gets shot, it actually awakens his powers and also all the other clones, and then mayhem ensues. And that's what is going to happen in season 2, according to this theory. Again, all the little sketches that you see in the corner were storyboarded by Tan at Picnic, which, again, just like when you're doing an animation in less than 2 months, 8 animations, and trying to illustrate the whole thing, just having it storyboarded for you is just like so helpful. It all culminated with, you know, obviously the release of the campaign, and also they made this whole thing into a tiny book that they had at London MCM Comic Con. Channel 4 had this entire lounge dedicated to this campaign and the TV show. And I actually got to sit in that chair on that table along with Tan, and I drew for a lot of people that weekend. So yeah, sometimes when you actually put yourself into your work and you have fun with it, you might actually end up getting paid to spend your weekend at a comic convention, which can be really fun. These are all the people involved in the projects, and thanks to them and thanks to you for listening to me.